hunger strikes, and trans rights. I'm sure you've all heard the news. The Supreme Court has come down with a devastating ruling that basically declares that the standard of overview of state legislation that prohibits trans treatment, and I put that bloody word in quotes, and bloody, I don't even mean ironically. It's not treatment, it's child genital mutilation, period, full stop. There was an argument as to whether or not a state could implement such a legislation without it being discriminatory and therefore unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court came down in a ruling and basically said, we're applying the rational scrutiny. I'm going to read the article just so I don't mess it up. But bottom line, it's a state issue and it's not a discriminatory law by its nature. So therefore, we don't have to apply a more stringent interpretation. And the states can implement whatever rules they want. It's up to them. We'll get to the dumbest judge on the bench, Sotomayor, in a second. But Slate, which is a far left-leaning activist journalistic organization, put that in quotes, writes, Amy Coney Barrett doesn't think the Supreme Court's anti-trans ruling went far enough. Let's read, shall we? On Wednesday, the Supreme Court delivered a brutal blow to transgender equality in that it won't let children mutilate their genitals with hormone replacement therapy, puberty blockers, bottom surgery, double mastectomies under the guise of gender-affirming care, in quotes, upholding a Tennessee law that outlaws gender-affirming care for trans youth. Its decision effectively greenlit similar bans that nearly half of the states have already enacted, cutting off access to treatment for thousands of minors across the country. Minors accessing treatment, in quote, treatment which permanently damages and mutilates their bodies, their genitals, resulting in bone density that is insufficient, micropenises, the inability to orgasm later on in life. It's treatment. It's treatment. My goodness, with treatment like that, who the hell needs Dr. Mengele's torture? As expected, the conservative supermajority hung together to justify these bans on the basis of dubious logic and contested factual claims, with Chief Justice Roberts writing for the majority and all three liberals dissenting. Yet there was friction even within the conservative bloc, with at least 3 Republican-appointed judges agitating to go even further in order to rubber stamp future discrimination against transgender Americans. Oh, yes. It's discrimination not to let a child mutilate themselves. Why? Discrimination to not let children get tattoos, smoke drugs, drink alcohol. Dahlia Lithwick and Mark Joseph Stern discussed the court's decision. Oh, we're not going down there. I'm not even reading this. I want to get to the probably the dumbest judge on the bench. And speaking of dubious claims and inadequate logic, Sotomayor, it's like people have forgotten what an absolute idiot she is. In the context of some of the COVID-19 lawsuits that made their way to the Supreme Court, Sotomayor at one point said that there were 100,000 children, which were, just so I don't misquote her. This was from a CNN fact check. I forget who it was. This was from a left-wing fact check. It says, a Sotomayor claim about COVID-19 and children. Sotomayor, a liberal, tried during the Friday hearing to emphasize the danger posed by the Omicron variant of the virus. She said, quote, we have over 100,000 children, which we've never had before, in serious condition, and many others on ventilators, end quote. Facts first, Sotomayor's claim about children wasn't even close to accurate. According to the federal data at the time Sotomayor spoke, fewer than 5,000 people under the age of 18, children, were hospitalized. They're children with COVID when they're hospitalized with COVID, allegedly, but they're adults that can go mutilate their bodies when it comes to trans rights of gender-affirming care, quote, end quote. All right. Fewer than 5,000 under the age of 18 were hospitalized in the U.S. when confirmed or suspected cases of COVID-19. The reported number of the child hospitalizations was 4,000 or whatever on Thursday, the day before the hearing, and was still under 5,000 Monday afternoon. And though there is no additional data on how many hospitalized children are in, quote, serious condition, a term Sotomayor didn't define but is used by hospitals to refer to patients who are actually ill with vital signs that may be unstable, it's overwhelmingly likely that none of them are. Sotomayor could have correctly said that the number of children hospitalized with COVID-19 is at record levels. So here's how they have to tell her. Here's how you do it next time, Sotomayor, you dumbass. You could have said it's at record levels without being an abject idiot. And she could have correctly said that the number has spiked in the last month, but she didn't. She could have. But next time, Sotomayor, you got your talking point from the fact checkers, because fact checkers are godforsaken wordsmiths of the devil activists. In this particular decision, this is what Sotomayor wrote in her dissent with sadness. Last page of it, but I'll read it here. See what we got here. Male but not female adolescents can receive medicines that help them look like boys, and female but not male adolescents can receive medicines that help them look like girls. Tennessee's law expressly classifies on the basis of sex and transgender status. So the Constitution and settled precedent require the court to subject it to intermediate scrutiny. The majority contorts this logic and precedent to say otherwise, inexplicably declaring it must uphold Tennessee's categorical ban on life-saving medical treatment so long as, quote, any reasonably conceivable state of facts, end quote, might justify it. Thus, the majority subjects a law that plainly discriminates on the basis of sex to mere rational basis review. By retreating from meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most, the court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. In sadness, I dissent. Jackson did something similar in another one of her dissents. It's with... I forget how she qualified her dissent. Just shut your traps and just say I dissent with sadness. What's ironic here, iron law of woke projection. The court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. In reality, they are victimizing children to the whims of their unhinged, deranged parents. It is a known fact. I won't give a number because I don't want to get it totally wrong. That the majority or a significant portion of so-called trans children are actually on the spectrum of autism. Easily manipulated, easily manipulatable, easy targets for freaking disgusting perverts, Dr. Mengeles who love human experimentation, and online influencers who love clout and know exactly who they need to target to manipulate. Life-saving medical treatment to irreparably damage the bodies of children. Well, considering that this idiot thought 100,000 children were in serious condition for COVID, it's no shit, Sherlock, that she doesn't know what the hell life-saving treatment actually is. The whims of political whims. My ass. It's indoctrination of mentally vulnerable children. I'm going to look for the stat as we talk about this, but I would argue, and I think many have, that this is transgender ideology by proxy. Because in as much as you had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, this is parents, and I would dare say majority mothers, who would make their children sick because of the virtue and the pity they would get from the general community, and they would deliberately make their kids sick so that they could get the sympathy. Transgender ideology is transgenderism by proxy, because I dare say, I know the stats. When you notice a certain demographic of Hollywood, LA liberal, that for whatever the reason have wildly, radically, statistically impossibly high levels of transgender children, you know it's probably coming from somewhere else and not the child. Find a nice, vulnerable, borderline on the spectrum autistic child, convince them that they are in fact right in their confusion. And what do you end up with? You end up with Cynthia Nixon and her Jewish son. I'm putting both of those words in quotes. The child is half Jewish because Cynthia Nixon, for those of you who don't know, was the whore from Sex and the City. Her husband, or the man that she had the child with, is Jewish. Under Jewish law, we all, whatever, they'll certainly qualify as Jewish. The son, in quote, end quote, in question, is a girl. It's Cynthia Nixon's daughter who happens to be trans. You look up celebs who have trans, my goodness, you'll find a lot of, what's going on? Do you want to see this? That's not working. Oh, now it's going to... Well, here's the news, by the way, if you haven't heard this. Cynthia Nixon, according to the New York Post, says her Jewish son, who is a half-Jewish girl, is on a, quote, hunger strike, end quote, to support Gaza. It's a known fact that Greta Thunberg was... Greta Thunberg autistic. I'm pretty sure that that's a known fact. Yes, Greta Thunberg has been diagnosed with autism spectrum. It's an amazing thing, eh? All of these activist children exploited by their parents tend to be autistic. Let me see what is Cynthia Nixon's child. Is Cynthia Nixon's trans child autistic? Let's see this. Cynthia Nixon revealed son Steph is trans. This was from 2018. Whatever, we'll read this here. Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon said her son, unquote, observant Jew, end quote, is currently doing a hunger strike with friends in Chicago to support Gaza and bring attention to the humanitarian crisis there. So easily manipulated, exploited for cheap political profit. Now she's a Jew when she wants to go and do what? Oh, well, look how righteous she has to be. She's an observant Jew who calls herself trans, a son. I'm fairly certain that it's a fundamental tenet of all religions that you're made in the image of God and that God doesn't make mistakes that need you to correct them as though you are God. Set that aside. Not really going to get into the absurdity of this story. Listen to this. They got to emphasize, people. Her son, Nixon, her son, Steph Moses, is doing the strike as part of the advocacy with Jewish Voices for Peace, the self-proclaimed Jewish anti-Zionist group that stands in solidarity with Palestinians. I'm not getting into the merits of any of these claims. I hate these arguments. But my goodness, is it interesting how Greta Thunberg exploited for the climate crisis, now being exploited for the Middle Eastern crisis. Now they take a trans, probably on the spectrum, confused kid, call her observant Jew, and look how legitimate her position has to be now as a result on hunger strike. He, make sure you say it over and over again, and 5 other of his compatriots are doing a hunger strike in Chicago Monday. Nixon told Newsweek, stop starving Gaza, stop arming Israel. He doesn't have illusions that he's going to end the war, but I think he wants to do everything he can, she added. Nixon, who is best known for playing a whore on Sex and the City, was Project whatever. Okay, fine. That's about the extent of that story that we care about. Exploiting children, sexualizing children, mutilating children, and feeling so bloody righteous and virtuous while you're doing it. At which point, Cory Booker says, hold my beer, Corn Pop. I got to come in here. Corn Pop Booker puts out a tweet yesterday, I guess. What time is it? June 18th? Yeah, it was yesterday. Today, the Supreme Court chose to abandon trans children in America. Upholding the Tennessee ban on medical care for trans kids is heartless. This is a sad day, but I know I will never stop fighting to protect trans children everywhere. I'm sorry. This is fucking perverted. I don't know how old this health god kid is. I'm going to look in a second here, but just listen to this adult, grown-ass male talking about sex and kids, because that's what it is. Sex, sexual preferences, genitals, this freaking pervert of a zhlubby sucking at the tit of the government, jackass Cory Booker, pathological liar, talking about children and sex because he's a fucking pervert.
No trans children. I hear the fear. I hear the worry that they're not safe. Think about this for a second. The number one killer of children in America is gun violence. They talk about that, the threat there? No. Singling out less than 1% of our population who has the highest rates of bullying, threats of violence. Heck, about 30% of LGBTQ kids, period, report missing school because of fear. And they made them the center of their political campaign. Faith teaches me to love everyone. What that means is you lead with a more courageous empathy for the struggles of trans children in America. No trans children. I hear the fear. I hear the worry.
Josh Helfgott seems to be 35 years old. Another adult making the online presence that they've garnered followers for, about talking about the sexuality of children. There's a word for that, and it's called grooming. And once upon a time, it used to be called perversion. And may we go back to a day when adults do not talk about sex or sexuality with anyone else other than their children, and don't make an industry of it. Because at first it's grassroots, then it gets co-opted, then it gets corporatized, then it gets politicized, and then it turns into what you see right now. An industry built around exploiting vulnerable, mentally unwell, confused, on the spectrum children. Let me see this. What percentage of trans kids are autistic? Let's see if I can just get a quick answer to this. We're going with AI overview on Google. Research suggests there's a higher prevalence of both autism and gender diversity in the same individual than would be expected by chance. Multiple studies have explored this co-occurrence, including looking at the rates of autism and transgender and gender diverse individuals and vice versa. Let's see, here we go. Prevalence of autism in transgender, I'll show you the results so that you don't take my word for it, but it's worth what it's worth, but I know that it's statistically anomalous. Prevalence of autism in transgender and gender diverse individuals. Study estimate that 11% of transgender and gender diverse individuals are diagnosed with autism. This is significantly higher than the estimated prevalence of autism in the general population, which is around 1 to 2%. Shocking. Doctors, perverts, politicians, targeting mentally vulnerable children to confuse the ever-loving shit out of them so that the doctors can make money off of it, the politicians can score political points out of it, and the fucking perverts online can make a social media following out of it and talk to other people's children because they don't have children of their own. They can't subvert their own children that they don't have, and they get power, pleasure, and satisfaction out of subverting the children of others. Serenity now.